After here, you're going to be eaten. So all those people who were into that, they already got weeded out. We have this mechanism that allows us, that says, oh, we saw stripes coming. Okay, here we go. All of a sudden, the signal now becomes conscious. The signal becomes conscious when it crosses the midline. So there's a thing that they talk about in that book called the P3 explosion in your brain waves. So that at any moment, so let's say a regular thought, that everything goes through, analyzed fully, and then all of a sudden it becomes conscious. That explosion happens, both sides of your brain become aware, different parts of your brain become aware of what is happening, and now you're conscious of it. Which is why there's about a half a second lag between anything that happens to the time when you actually perceive. That half a second lag is going to get you killed every time you see a tiger in the woods. So we have a mechanism around that that allows these more primitive parts of our brains to become conscious of something and then subsequently react to it. We in fact have systems where this, instead of creating a conscious thought, loops back to our spinal cord so that we can run away from that tiger before we're even actually aware of what it is we're running away from. This mechanism of escape, so that you become aware, become conscious of something when you absolutely need it, is very important. So if you think about it, this is very important for not just survival, running away from tigers, but it may actually be very important in replication, in being able to find a mate. Because if you think about it, if you could see all, analyze fully, everybody, and every time, it would be probably very difficult for you to sleep with someone. You could see all their faults. And maybe this wouldn't lend itself to propagation of the species very well. Next. Okay. I think we already talked about this, so let's go to the next one. This is kind of a difficult subject, so if anybody wants me to clarify anything, please ask me now. Some of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be dependent on this. We're all on board with
that whole slide? What's Umwelt?
Oh, the Umwelt.
Yeah.
So the Umwelt is, I just put that in there because your Umwelt is the combination of things that you're aware of. So we have our 5 senses, or 6 or 7, depending on who you talk to. And we construct our world, we're aware of certain things in this world. So if you, let's say, if someone didn't have their sight, the vision and these pictures would not be part of their Umwelt. But their Umwelt would expand otherwise because more sense of touch and smell and other things would replace the parts of our brain that would normally be analyzed in the picture. So if you think about the I'm always fascinated by pictures of tigers and lions and things in Africa with just all these flies running everywhere around them, and they're completely unaware. Now if it was me, I would be going crazy trying to get these flies off of me, and these guys are completely oblivious to that. And so that is something that they have decided, okay, we're going to scratch this off because the flies don't bother us, and it doesn't help us to be batting them away all the time. But, and that's part of their escape. If they went through their brain, completely analyzed everything that was coming in, that would be bugging them. But they can circumvent that, and that does not come into their consciousness. Okay, so capitalism. And we're going to tie these together as they talk a little bit about capitalism. Dominant economic structure based on ownership, and it's completely dependent on growth. And if you always look at which way the growth curve is going, and if the economy is contracting, then we're all in sad shape. There's no money going around. Everybody's high unemployment and whatnot. So growth is very important. The word capitalism, and this I learned this from reading the World Peace Diet, comes from the root capita, which comes from capitis, and capitalist is someone who owns heads. Whether now that originally was heads of cattle, but I'm sure now we can count heads of humans in there as well. And so our history became a combination of trying to protect what we own, the capital that we have, and then trying to go after the capital that other people have. So basically, there were a bunch of capitalists, there was another capitalist, this capitalist looked at another one, said, I'd like to have some of the heads of cattle and the people that he has, so there were wars, and that's how basically our history has formed to some extent with the working principle of domination. We dominate animals, we dominate other humans, we dominate the land, we change things, and that becomes the way that our lives go. And then we need consumers, because the original capitalists that came, well, they had their cows, they had their humans that worked for them. There had to be some exchange going on, because we got beyond, to some extent, the wars, and we decided it would be better for everybody if we started exchanging things. And so we started developing products to sell to people. And the very important thing to know about the products is that, well, we need somebody to buy those products. Whether these are guns that we're selling, then we need to start wars. If it's meat and dairy that we have, then we have to have people consuming meat and dairy. If it's medications, vaccines, and vitamins that we have, well, then that's what we need. We need consumers for that. And to a great extent, the philosophy of selling in a capitalist world is to prove to you that you have a hole for which you have to spend money in order to fill. There is a deficiency that can only be filled by something that you buy. And preferably you would buy the thing over and over, because that's what we've convinced you that you need to do. And the job of convincing people that they have a hole that they need to fill is done so well that we have a significant placebo effect. The placebo effect, basically you take a sugar pill instead of a pill that's supposed to do something for you, is about 40% for many things. And I used to think that it was 40% for just things that are psychosomatic, things that are basically have no real basis, but they're kind of things that people have imagined are wrong with them. But I had the good fortune of reading a study about 3 months ago that on heart failure. And in patients who have stage 3 and 4 heart failure, that means their heart's working so poorly that as they're sitting there, they're panting. Or they get up and walk a few feet from this side of the room to that side of the room, and they have to stop because they have to catch their breath. Real disease. We're not talking about some imagined thing. We're not talking about some psychosomatic thing. Somebody took these people and put a device in them. They actually did an operation to put a device in their heart. And 50% of the people got the device that actually helped them. The other 50 people just got a wire put in there. Out of the people who had the wire, there was a 40% response rate, as opposed to a 75% response rate for the instrument. So this goes to just tell you how important the brain is and its expectations of what is going to happen. And so I always encourage people not to take themselves too seriously, because well, this is what we see. Let's skip this one. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we really get into it is this word with a W as opposed to just an H, which I always wondered why holistic medicine is like, there's something holy about it. It's whole, this is where it comes from. And there's actually a very good book I'm reading by Colin Campbell by the name of Whole, which talks a lot about how reductionism is not the way to necessarily be going through. So basically reductionism is for us to say, okay, you have heart attacks. Okay, so let's pare that down to one thing that is causing those heart attacks, and we say cholesterol. Okay, but cholesterol is not the whole story, but that's what we like to know. We like to know the whole story. We like to be able to say, this is the problem. Here, your cholesterol is too high, take this pill, it's gonna go lower, and you're gonna get better. It's just not that simple, but that's what we need to, that's the kind of thinking we need, because we need to sell you cholesterol drugs. That's what we need to do. And I don't think that everything can be reduced to its component parts and solved. There's a melody, there's a symphony going, and all the different players, all the different instruments have to be in tune and in sync for things to work right. And yes, one thing can alter things, but usually it's a whole slew of things, but we identify only one thing.